Hello everyone, I'm Matt Williamson. What's going on? It is Mailbag Day. Quickly becoming maybe my favorite podcast of the week. That's selling it short. We got some pretty good ones. So we're just going to dig right in here. Football arguments. Do you think the Steelers could take someone before the season at a position we have an aging vet on their last year at? Positions like guard with Siamalu or cornerback with Slay. Is there a younger guy that hasn't had much success yet that they could grab and practice with for a year? I'm not really going to avoid your question or really answer it, to be honest with you, because I just went over this on yesterday's pod, which you probably haven't listened to yet. Kind of talked about the Elliott signing and my to-do list for the rest of the offseason. And yes, I mean, your short answer is absolutely. And a lot of these questions today revolve around that. That's why I wanted to throw that out there, that I guess the theme of today's mailbag is don't be done with the roster, and that happened to be what I was talking about yesterday. So there's some correlation there as well, but I got into a lot more detail about it yesterday. And again, remember Joe Hayden, Quan Alexander, there's many examples of dudes that they added late in the cycle, so they're not done. My man Rob asks, I know he has health issues, but what about the Steelers bringing in Asante Samuel Jr. for a physical? I'm not totally sure if he can play inside or not, but if healthy, he is the best cornerback 3 in the league. Perfect example, right. I mean, it's kind of like the Gabe Davis situation where I think the only reason Samuel Jr. isn't on a team is I don't think he can pass a physical now. I think that's why Gabe Davis was in here and needs more time before he can pass physical. People don't think about that stuff with team building. Doesn't mean he won't play this year or he's damaged goods, but sometimes it takes a while before doctors clear him and he's not going to get signed before that. He'd be a great addition. I think he's slot capable, but he's also not a hammer tackler corner. And you just figure it out. If he's a good football player, he'd be in the mix. He'd be on the field. He'd be depth. To your point, he'd be one of the best cornerback 3s in the league without question, if he's able to play and not hindered by injuries. But some of these guys, it just is going to take time before they can get medically cleared. It's a rough game and their bodies are beat up. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. With baseball season in full swing, we're into the NBA Finals, and BetOnline has more ways to stay in the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. We keep the dog days of summer rolling with the largest selection of odds on everything, with updated odds on the MLB, UFC, and boxing, tennis to NFL futures. BetOnline remains your best online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline casino with the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. We'll get back to some of these team building stuff, but my man Michael Odesso asked, what is Roman Wilson's ceiling? Ceiling's a big word. What's the absolute best case scenario for any player is how I look at ceiling. And Wilson, I would say his ceiling would be a solid number 2 NFL receiver. Little smaller, but sharp out of his breaks, has some outside ability, but mostly a slot. And that's high praise. That means you're the 35th best wide receiver in the league. So that's ceiling. Again, I'm aiming really high here. Do I think he's going to get there? No. I don't think any player is going to truly hit their ceiling. If I had to bet, most don't. 99% don't hit what is absolute best case. You choose choose your own adventure. You make every right choice, etc. I think a realistic is a high quality slot option that is reliable, tough, and becomes kind of a fan favorite, gets a second contract, catches you 55 balls a year, scores 4 touchdowns, a high percentage of his catches go for first downs, throws his body around and has a physicality to his game for a smaller guy that endears him to the fans and makes you maybe buy a Ramon Wilson jersey or two. You know what I mean? To me, that's more of, boy, that would be a home run. You know, like that's the low ceiling, I guess is the way I'd put that. Paul asked a good question. And I like where he's thinking with this because I think often along the same terms. But if they knew they were getting Rodgers all along, why didn't they throw a bag of money at Davante Adams? Why did they let James Daniels walk? And the second question he asked, why did they let James Daniels walk? Given market prices for O linemen, $8 million for a proven young guard to battle McCormick, and much better line depth overall would have made a lot of sense. Good point. Daniels maybe could then be your left guard next year if Siamalu leaves. He has center capabilities if Frazier were to get hurt. But I think what you're missing here, he'd be a wonderful addition at $8 million. They could afford it. I'll get to Adams in a second. If I'm James Daniels, though, I would rather go to the Dolphins and not compete with anybody. Their line's horrendous. I walk right in as a starter, basically unchallenged, even though Miami drafted what I think will be a guard early in the draft. Big Jonah from Arizona. Daniels has a starting job laid out on a silver platter for him. And maybe he likes South Beach. And I bet he loves not paying any state income tax in the state of Florida. I think that's also the case with Adams. So Adams made it pretty publicly known, went to Fresno State. He wanted to play on the West Coast. That's what he considers home. And he did, you know. And frankly, the Rams are at least as appealing as the Steelers. I mean, McVay is a mastermind. They're a higher projected win total. Pairs with Nakua and Stafford. Even if him and Rodgers are the best buddies of all time, that's a really attractive landing spot for him, especially the geography situation that the Steelers can't compete with. And from what I remember, I'm not sure at that point when we say they knew they were going to sign Rodgers all along, I think that's true for the last few months, but I don't know that this was a done deal or their option day one of free agency. I mean, they were still definitely talking to Fields at that point. I don't think they had any, pipe dreams that Matthew Stafford was going to be a Steeler at that point, but I don't know that they had come to the conclusion day one, day two of free agency when everything's happened like crazy that it was definitely going to be Rodgers. And Adams needs to act now. I'm going to Stafford. Aaron, I'd love to play with you, but I can't wait around for you either. I got to go. I'm going back home to California. So I think that's all that is. I lumped a couple questions together here. I'm still of the belief that the Steelers only certainly have 2 offensive linemen for the foreseeable future, Frazier and Troy. Okay. We can remain hopeful in Broderick and Mason, but until then, on the offensive side of the ball, the only spot we're well suited for the future is running back. I think tight end's pretty well suited. I see I wanted to focus more on the O-line. Depth definitely worries me. I definitely think when next year's draft rolls around and they have all those extra 3s and 4s and 5s, they'll take an extra O-lineman. Maybe one of them's going to be the starting left guard and then another one. I could definitely see them taking one more young O-lineman. Not in the first round. I think that's quarterback. And I hear what you're saying. I guess it's a little generous to say Troy is a fixture, but I feel the same way as you. Jones is a massive crossroads year. I think McCormick is close to being over the hump of suitable to quality starting guard. It's a pretty good start, though. I mean, again, if you look around the league, there aren't many teams with linemen that age that they could say, boy, I think we're going to get maybe up to a decade out of this guy. Along those lines, too, assuming Ciamalo has another decent season, do you think they bring him back, or do you expect someone like Ryan McCullum to get some left guard snaps this summer? Well, they're definitely going to cross-train a lot of these guys in camp. Anderson's the best example. Maybe McCullum, but I kind of look at McCullum as center only. But that is a fixture of training camp, is cross-training interior O-linemen at all three spots. Right guard, can you play some right tackle? Because you realize during a game when a handful of your linemen are inactive, somebody's got to get me out of the game if two of these guys fall. I don't know about Ciamalo. I think they love his personality and his leadership and all those things. And maybe he plays well enough that you just give him a 1-year deal and say, let's run it back. I'm happy with you. You're happy with me. We've got cap space. 4th round pick as a guard. And all of a sudden you've got a nice room again. I think that's possible. But I do think last year was his worst year in a while. And the arrow's pointing down. I know that there were some injuries too, or, some things like all these guys deal with. I have slight worries that he's going to be a liability, but probably veterans his way through the year and maybe another, whether it's in black and gold or somewhere else. However, there's a super shortage of O-linemen across the entire league. And if he knows I can hit free agency and just see what offers roll in, he might just choose to do that. But I think he's happy here and they're happy with him and don't want to move. So I think it's possible. I would say borderline unlikely, but possible. T-Mac 256. History question. Is Jack Ham and Jack Lambert the best linebacker duo of all time? The Chiefs, before this group, had some great ones. There's been some pretty awesome ones in the Niners, Bowman and Willis and guys like that. Ray Lewis played with some good dudes for sure. Kuechly and Thomas Davis. I'm just thinking, I'm really rattling things off the top of my head here. And frankly, I'm not going to call TJ Watt or Lawrence Taylor or Derek Thomas a linebacker. Edge rushers to me aren't linebackers. So off the ball, maybe I'm forgetting about a couple. I know I'm forgetting about a couple pairings, but it's pretty hard to go against two easy Hall of Famers, not borderline Hall of Famers. Frankly, I think Ham is in the conversation of best off the ball linebacker ever with a Lewis or a Butkus or whatever. And I know you hate me for this, but I also think Lambert's a smidge overrated. Ham to me is the better player. But that being said, Lambert is still moonwalks into the Hall of Fame easily. He wasn't a, man, I don't know if he should go or not type guy. And Ham's a no-brainer Hall of Famer. So I'm going to go yes on that. All right, guys, fun one. We got one more this week. Take care.